This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Welcome to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Werner, licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. Moments of Clarity's mission is to educate and end the stigma on mental health through the inspirational stories of our exceptional guests. You can join in the show by calling Tiffany toll-free at 866-826-1340 or on Facebook and Twitter at MOC with Tiffany. Now, here's Tiffany Werner.
Hi, thanks for listening, and you're tuning into Moments of Clarity. My name is Tiffany Werner. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm your host. We're going to have a good show today. We're going to be talking with two professionals, myself and my guest, who's a professional psychologist. And we're going to be discussing anxiety, obsessive-compulsive traits, and so much more, and coping skills, and how to fight through that and to help yourself heal. I want to say hi to Ed behind the glass. And
it is Friday.
Thank goodness, right? And so thank you, Ed, for everything you do. And thank you for my team that helps put the show on, and for you guys all being here and listening. Much appreciated. So my guest today is a clinical psychologist in California, and her clinical work started first as a school psychologist, but then she changed into a clinical psychologist for mental health. And she has significant experience working with children, adolescents, and adults with obsessive-compulsive disorder, trauma, anxiety, and emotional regulation problems. And she is the founder of the East Bay Behavior Therapy Center and a boutique therapy practice where she runs intensive outpatient programs integrating acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, and exposure response prevention, so it's great for anxiety, to support clients getting stuck from obsessions and figure out what they actually care about and do stuff that actually matters to them. And she has local, national, international conferences that she has attended and spoken at. And in order to keep up with current clinical research and deliver up-to-date therapy services to her clients. We're going to talk about all of this on the show. And I want to welcome to Moments of Clarity, Dr. Patricia Zurita Ona. Hi, Patricia. And she also goes by Dr. Z, so we're going to be doing that today, too. Patricia, hi.
Hi. Hi, Tiffany. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And wow, you've done a lot of things over the last 10 years. You've been learning, practicing, and teaching, and accepting for acceptance and commitment therapy. And it's a lot of great stuff that you're doing out there. And so let's just begin every therapist has a story of why we become therapists. And where was your moment of clarity, and why do you do what you do?
Thank you so much for the question. I was thinking a lot about this based on our conversation briefly before the show, and I think I have many moments of clarity, not just one.
Every time you say that, I'm going to ring a bell. You know that. Okay, so what was one of them? We'll get to all of them. I'd love to hear it.
Here's the Latino version of my moment of clarity. And I think my first moment of clarity was when I was maybe 13, 14 years old. I was very interested in philosophy, and I was reading this famous book, Crime and Punishment. And the main character, right, he was really struggling with anxiety and figuring out what to do and moral issues. And the book was so well written that I got really, really curious about the complexity of being a person carrying so many interests, wishes, desires, and all types of thoughts. So that was my moment of clarity, realizing that I do want to be working with people because I'm more a relationship person.
Right.
So that was one.
Okay. So what are some others?
Yes. There are many. I think later on, I remember when I graduated from high school, my other moment of clarity is that my family thought that I should be a lawyer. I don't know how they think that, but they thought that I will do well practicing law. And I actually went to check it out.
Did you debate a lot as a kid? Did you argue back?
Yeah.
Every time we argue, parents are like, you'd make a great lawyer.
I think I had a very strong opinion.
That would make sense.
I had a strong opinion. news. So I remember going to check law school, some classes, and after maybe a couple of weeks, I went back home. I said, that's just not for me. I'm all about just working with people and just really developing one-on-one relationships. That was a big moment of clarity for me, because I have to talk to the whole family about it, right?
Right.
But I was very, very clear that my whole thing was about working with people, and I was very interested in all these layers that we have about, when we are alive and doing the things that we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of times people get it kind of confused with we want to help people, and a lot of times, I actually thought I was going into law too, and I took criminology at University of Florida, and I just didn't like all the legal terms and things like that, but I wanted to help still. So, but I think that I was encouraged to do that because I like to debate a lot of stuff that I was opinionated to. So that makes sense. But,
I can see that. Tiffany.
So, okay, so there's a lot of things that you've done. And so then you went to school and you started as a school counselor or a school psychologist. Mm-hmm. And what made you change your mind?
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So when I was in Bolivia, after realizing or being very clear that I don't want to do anything related to law, I went to psychology. And I actually went to a program in psychology in a city called Cochabamba in Bolivia. Mm-hmm. It's a fancy name, right?
Yeah.
But at that time, the program there was very analytical focus, and I have been always very interested in science-based stuff and behaviorist. So I did actually that program for 2 years, but it was fully based in psychoanalysis. I was mandated to do analysis myself there, but the program, the philosophy, never related to me in terms of how I see people, how I understand human behavior. So after that, I switched, and at that time, there was this big program on school psychology. So that's how I went into the equivalent of the school psychology, and I was working still with anxiety and depression, but primarily with children and families. But that gave me one venue, and then one thing led
to another families,
thing.
DCF or CPS or all that stuff it's hard work. I got to give props to the people that appreciation for people that actually do that, and it's probably overwhelming.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was primarily, I had, the work was primarily in a school site, so definitely I did a lot of some of the reporting, but it was really focused on anxiety. I ran a coping skills anxiety group for the teens. We did another one for the children. Then we had support groups for parents. And I also had a small private practice then. But then one thing led to another thing. I ended up in the States in 2001. And that's when I started studying my doctoral program in school psychology. Mm-hmm. And I focused primarily on my training in working with adults, working in hospital settings, nonprofits, private settings, you name it, mm-hmm. because that was going to complement my previous experience working with children and families.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're a specialist with anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder and people that are experiencing irrational fears and I know that's your main focus. And why do you focus just on, or why is that your expertise? Is this something you suffer with as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking that question. I think I had my first panic attack when I was maybe 21 years old. I was driving back from a camping trip in Bolivia after having an amazing weekend, exploring nature, going for long hikes, swimming. It was just really a sweet weekend. And I remember when I was driving back, I was listening to the Beatles on the radio. And then suddenly, out of the blue, next thing I saw, there is that big, humongous white truck driving in the opposite lane. And in that moment, my mind had this image about myself being crushed, by this truck. And I saw myself dying, covered in blood. And I remember it started
graphic.
Yeah, it was really...
I think that crosses all of our minds at some point when we're going on a 2-lane highway and a mass semi truck is just on the other side and you can kind of see the wind blowing them or something. I don't know. My car's small, so it crosses my mind like I'm gonna be smushed like a bug. But
I see. Well, that's what the mind does, right? It comes with all these types of images. Some of them are very bizarre and graphic. I remember I had this image and I got so scared that I started holding the wheel really, really hard, and I keep driving next to the truck. And maybe that may have been like 2 minutes driving next to the truck, but for me it felt like 1 hour, right? I had to pull over and I was just hyperventilating and I was really, really scared about it. That was, I think for me, that was the first time when I had a full-blown panic attack. Before, definitely, I had been more on the anxious side of things, but never had a panic attack until that time. And I think later on, it's very interesting because that image of dying in a car accident actually comes with me wherever I go, right? Whether I'm driving or not, whether I'm walking or not, it's an image that pops up. And it's the same very annoying image. Yeah. So that's one experience that I think I can understand from the inside out what it means to be paralyzed and stuck by fear.
Fear is the hardest thing to erase from our brain, from our psyche, for sure.
I think it's very, very hard, especially because the brain doesn't work by subtraction, but by addition, right? Once the brain learns an association, it's natural to develop more associations around that. I think the other thing that happens with fear is that there are so many messages about that we shouldn't be afraid, that we should conquer fear, that we should dominate fear. But that's not what happens under our skin. Wherever we go, we may experience fear, right? It's unplanned and unrehearsed. It just happens, and it's not our fault.
Right. And you have to remember that the triggers, like anytime you see something, is going to remind you of that panic attack or of that fear. They say like sometimes our anxieties have anxieties of their own too, and it's something that it's just something that can subliminally come back and resurface at any time, which makes people more nervous.
Yeah. I think that there is the brain again doesn't work by elimination, but that tiny cue, like in my case, for example, but that driving next to a big truck, that's still a big trigger for me, right? Sometimes more manageable than others. Sometimes I'm still holding, the wheel really, really hard, just in case I'm playing it safe.
But that's probably a good thing anyway, to not take it lightly. But still, I mean,
do not close your eyes when you're driving.
Don't close your eyes while driving, for sure.
But I think that, adding what you were saying, I think the brain remembers those associations and they pop up. These associations pop up sometimes with that particular trigger, with a very different non-related trigger, because that's just what the brain does, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure. So I want to get to some coping skills. You're an expert in this arena, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the things that you do with your clients and talking about that too. And you're working on some books and things, and we're going to get to that in just a moment, but we're going to take our first commercial break, and we'll be back with Moments of Clarity. Please stay tuned. You've got something to look forward to.
You're listening to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Werner. We welcome your input at 866-826-1340. Tiffany will be right back after this.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Are you looking to expand your knowledge in the mental health field and earn CEU credits at the same time? DID Discovering Hope is having their annual Creating Resilience Conference on November 15th and 16th, and it's open to all trauma survivors and therapists. 2 days of educational workshops will be led by internationally respected experts, including keynote speaker Dr. Colin A. Ross. For mental health professionals, 11 hours of CEUs are available. For more information or to register, visit diddiscoveringhope.org. Once again, that's diddiscoveringhope.org.
Hi, this is Tiffany Werner, your host of Moments of Clarity. Living with a mental health disorder is not easy. If you or someone you know are struggling with this, please know it's so important to seek treatment, and I'm here to help. Please visit the website at